What's going on, fellas? I've got a 2003 Honda Civic here, and I'm using this car to point out to you the location of some important fuses for the starter, as well as the location of the starter relay. So let's head under the hood. Behind this box here, which we open by squeezing these two tabs together on either side and lifting up, we're gonna find two fuses here that both provide power to the ignition switch. So those fuses are gonna be this one, the battery fuse, and the ignition number 1 fuse. If you peer down through the top, you should be able to see if the fuse is intact or not. Another thing you can do is you can use a voltmeter and you can measure between these two terminals and see if there's voltage potential. There should be none. Now, one other thing to do while you're here, go ahead and check the tightness of these Phillips head screws. I have seen instances in which a loose Phillips screw at one of these fuses can cause issues with the car not starting or even shutting off at times. So both of these fuses feed the ignition switch, and the ignition switch, when you turn it to the start position, provides power to the starter relay. And it actually sends power to 2 different lines to the starter relay. But how do I know if my ignition switch is working? Well, there's one way we can find out. Let's pop this cover off and take a look at fuse number 21. So this car, this particular Civic, is the hybrid. So it's got a fuse number 21. That's gonna be in this location right here. Now what's cool about this is that fuse gets energized by the ignition switch when you turn it to the start position. So you can use a voltmeter and place the voltmeter probe on that exposed metal of the fuse and see if you're getting power there when you're trying to start the car. Now, even if you don't have a hybrid, you can still put a voltmeter in this spot and you should see this fuse slot get energized when the key is turned to the start position. And as far as the starter relay, let's go to the passenger side and I'll show you about that. I'm also going to show you some troubleshooting steps with that starter relay. And you can also check to see if the ignition switch is working at that spot as well. So to get to it, we've got to open our glove box here. And there's a retainer on each side that we've got to pop down. It's missing on this side, but I'll show you on this one. You've got to push this in like so, and then that piece should come through. This is a retainer. This basically prevents the glove box from opening all the way. So that's that right there. You've got to get that out on both sides. And here we can see this is the starter relay. Now, my favorite way to troubleshoot this is, of course, have the car in park or in neutral and have someone turn the key and hold it in the start position. And while they're holding the key there, I'll take that relay and I'll tap on it. You can also grab the relay and wiggle it and squeeze it. And what that does, sometimes relays get stuck, and by tapping or wiggling the relay, you can free that relay up. Now, further troubleshooting, I can just take this relay out, set it aside, and I can take the relay behind it and swap it into its position. This relay is for the reverse lights. So if after I swap in a different relay, if the car still won't start, then I know that the relay was probably not the issue. But if the car does start after I swap the relay, then I know that the original relay in that position is no good. Now you'll note that there's 4 wires here on the relay. So these 2 larger pins on the relay, that's going to be these 2 right here. When this relay is energized, it connects those 2 pins together. And what that does is it takes power from the ignition switch and sends it to the starter relay. This relay is energized by voltage appearing between these 2 pins. The computer provides a ground at one of them, and the ignition switch provides a power at the other one. And on some Civics, the computer does not provide the ground to trigger it. It comes from the neutral safety switch. So if you never see 12 volts between these 2 pins, either you've got an issue with the ignition switch or an issue with the neutral safety switch or the clutch switch. Now you can actually bypass all of that If you take a wire and connect these two pins together, then you will be directly driving this starter by the ignition switch. So there will be no interrupt for if the car's not in park or neutral. So that's just a troubleshooting step. If you connect these two wires together and then you're able to start the car by turning the key, then there's probably something going on, with something other than the ignition switch or the starter. Let me go ahead and put this back in. So yeah, I hope that this information was a good starting point for you in troubleshooting your Civic. If you have any questions, definitely please do let me know. One other thing you can do, I've mentioned tapping on the relay. You can actually tap on the starter as well, if you're able to get to it. And don't forget to put the piece here back in. I'll just show you like this. It goes in like that and it pops. So yeah, please do let me know if you have any questions, or more importantly, if you have any advice about troubleshooting the starter on your Honda Civic.